Alright, today we are going to talk about my favorite player type, fish. These guys are literally giving their money away. When the expression bleeding chips was created, I'm pretty sure this was the player type that people had in mind. Now, fish aren't the type of player who will just give you their stack for no reason, but to them, top pair, now that's a good reason. And I mean, with some of them, any pair is a good reason. Slowly but surely, these guys will give their money away since they never make a move, they never try to steal a pot, but they love to call. And, you know, they love to call and then fold later in the hand, too, so you can win the small pots as well as the big pots from these guys. Sometimes I wonder if these guys lost their F1 and F3 keys, because all they're ever doing is checking and calling, almost no matter what they're holding. Let's get right into it with these guys. So first, their poker tracker stats typically have a massive VPIP, be it in a full ring or a short-handed game, an extremely small pre-flop raise, as we see the number 2. This because they only raise with aces, kings, and some of them raise ace-king, and some of them will raise queens, but not much more than that. And of course, no aggression. With these guys, the stat will range between 0 and a massive 1 for those who are a little more aggressive. Fish love to see flops with almost anything for almost any price. If they limp, they'll probably call a raise about half the time. That's a ton of garbage they're seeing flops with. Since they raise so infrequently, it's easy to play against them when they raise. Go mining with anything speculative and be ready to felt if you can beat a pair of aces. Don't call with anything that's easily dominated because you don't want to give value away if you hit a pair and they had you killed before the flop, as they should. Just be aware that they so rarely bet at any point in the hand that if they do bet, they probably have something super strong. So don't call them to keep them honest or anything. And whatever you do, do not double these guys up. It'll take you a good half hour to get your money back if someone else doesn't get it first. So whatever you do, do not pay them off, because when they bet, they've probably got it, and it's just giving money away much in the same fashion that they are if you're going to give them action. So their strength, if you can call it a strength, is that fish are unbluffable. They love to call with any pair, even ace high, so don't bother trying to steal pots from these guys. If you try to bluff a fish, it's like trying to steal from a bank. Sure, the reward is nice, but odds are it's not going to work out for you. Your value will come against this player type by simply getting extreme value with your made hands. Their weaknesses are much more prevalent. First off, they love to limp and call raises with garbage. They also fail to raise and re-raise with hands that warranted pre-flop. They will almost always have the worst hand going to the flop, and if they have the best hand, well, they probably just limped with it and missed value. The next weakness is that if they have a hand they wanted to see a flop for a limp with, they'll probably still call like a 5x raise with it because they really want to see the flop. Even if the pot's heads up and they're holding crap like king-jack offsuit facing an under-the-gun raise, if they want to see a flop with that king-jack offsuit, they're gonna, no matter what the price. Fish just love to splash around, and there's really not too much thinking to their game. This flaw also carries over to post-flop. I've seen fish put in over 100 big blinds against an obvious made hand with just top pair, no kicker. They don't have a fold button pre-flop or post-flop, and that is a huge plus for us. And the last weakness is that they never raise. The first perk to this is that even if the fish cold decks us, we probably won't lose too much to them, whereas against a reg we would have get stacked. It also means that we have full control of the action since we never have to fear getting raised or check raised. We can draw to our draws for the exact price that we want, and we can get the exact value for our made hands at the same time, because whatever we bet, odds are that like 90% of the time, Mr. Fish the villain can't wait to just call us. Never raise, just call. So let's get into the adjustments you should make to your play to extract maximum value from the fishies. The first one should be obvious. Since they don't fold, our fold equity is 0. Bluffing has no value. Don't bluff. Against these guys, when you have a made hand, you want to bet, and you want to check when you don't have a made hand and try to improve to a pair. When you have a big hand, bet very big to extract maximum value. If a fish has a pair and he's going to call you, he's not going to care about the size of the bet, so you might as well make it big. He's either going to call you or he's not. The size is not going to matter. And again, you got to bet big because you can't expect a fish to help you build a pot by raising you at any point. You've got 4 streets to get value from this opponent, so bet big and bet hard when you have the goods. Against a fish, you should also value bet more hands than you would against a regular, a wider range. Top pair is almost always good for value since they'll call you down with bottom pair or under pairs. Sometimes even mid pair is good enough depending on your fish. But when it gets to the river, you don't want to value bet too thin, by which I mean betting with like a hand that you're really not sure if you're good or not. Remember, fish just call with their good hands the same way they just call with their bad hands. So don't get yourself trapped on the river, since the fish is always willing to let you off the hook by offering you a chance to check behind the river for showdown. So if you're unsure, because this guy is just as likely to have a bad hand as a good hand, feel free to check it behind. You'll win a pretty big pot because you probably value bet the flop and the turn. The next adjustment is that pre-flop you want to isolate a wider range against the fish. If the fish is limping with like 50% hands, you want to be raising about 25% of your hands for straight up value. That way, when you guys see the flop, you will have the best hand like the majority of the time. You will have this opponent type dominated with almost anything you'd normally play. And the more hands you can play against this opponent, the more opportunities you will have to get value from them. That's why you should widen your isolating range against them. Until the table adjusts and starts re-raising your isolation plays, this should be your pre-flop go-to move against this player type. So again, raise a wider range for value, meaning big cards, like instead of just raising king-queen, you would now raise like queen-jack, king-jack, maybe even jack-10. But also, don't forget to raise your speculatives, since these guys pay off like slot machines if you flop your jackpot and they flop any pair, so you want to be building that pot early. Since fish only raise the premium of the premiums, you should be calling their ranges with a lot of speculative hands, even if it's a heads-up pot. It's the same reasoning as before. If you hit a big hand, you can get a huge payoff, and since you already know that they probably have the big pair they need to pay you off, your implied odds are through the roof, and you should try to take the fish's money whenever you have the opportunity, since you aren't going to be the only player with your eyes set on this opponent, and they're only going to be having their stack for a limited amount of time. You want to take as many chances as you can to bust the fish before someone else does. The last adjustment works because of the predictability of fish. I've said that fish only know how to call for the most part, which is true. However, there is one unique situation where you can make a fish bluff and get value with a hand that has no business getting value. If there's a draw and you're out of position and you have bet the flop, maybe continuation bet, and then you bet the turn against the fish with a pair or better, and he's just calling you down, which is what he'll do, and the draw misses on the river, you should check. Unless you have like the nut pair, like aces, odds are probably about 50-50 that you have him beat if he has a pair. However, a large part of his range is going to be draws because there's a lot more combinations to make the draw than there is to make the pair. And if he has the draw, he will fold if you bet the river. However, if you check to him on the river, the fish will recognize that he can't win the pot by checking behind since he has no hand. And he will often stab, often a pot-sized bet too, so be prepared to call a big one, with the hopes that your check meant weakness. Wrong. This way you can snap his bluff even with a very weak pair, And like I said, get some value with a hand that had no business winning you money, just because it's the one time a fish will bluff, and you might as well take advantage of it, because I think it's a well-known spot among good players, and it's just a huge moneymaker. I mean, if you can get a pot-sized bet when the pot's already huge on the river, just imagine how many big blinds that is. So, to summarize, value bet the shit out of these guys. Don't bluff, but remember to go for that free value when the draws break out on the river. This has been Grips.com with my guide to gutting the fish. I hope you guys get some value for it, and I hope you enjoyed the video.